everybody. I hope everyone's doing well and having a great weekend. I'm Gina with Advantage College Planning, and I'm really excited to talk with you all tonight about AI in college admissions. What's changed? What do you need to know? What are the key things that you and your students need to know as you go into this admissions cycle? So, thanks so much for joining me. If you are hearing me okay, if the sound is coming through, if the video is coming through, go ahead and hit the like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a comment. You can share in the chat where you're tuning in from or what year your student is, anything like that. That lets me know, number one, who I'm chatting with, which is always helpful. And number two, and just lets me know that all of the technology is working the way that it's supposed to. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much. So I'm so excited to talk about this topic tonight. It is one that comes up a lot in our office at Advantage College Planning and with our students specifically, especially around this time of year. We are on, what is this, October 5th. So we are in the final days before deadlines for early action are coming up. So pressure is on. I know students are really feeling it. Even my students who are in really great shape are coming in feeling stressed just because everyone around them is stressed. And so with that stress sometimes comes looking for, a way to reduce that stress and pressure. And for students these days, that's looking to AI, looking to technology, figuring out how they can use those tools to make the workload a little bit more manageable for themselves. And that's totally fine, right? It is okay to use those tools. It's okay to, use things that have been invented to make life easier for us, but we have to make sure we're doing that ethically. So, what I wanted to talk about tonight is AI and what we're seeing from colleges in terms of how colleges are using AI, and also the way that our students, or maybe students in your own home, are thinking about using AI. You're wondering, is this okay? Is this something that's going to help them or hurt them in the admissions process? So, those are going to be some things that we'll be talking about tonight. Awesome. So I see we have one person coming in from Concord, North Carolina. Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. You have a senior. Perfect timing to be tuning in for this topic. So let's go ahead and jump right in. When we're talking about AI in college admissions, the first thing that comes up with my students is essays, because that's a big part of the college application process, is writing not only a personal essay, which is a maximum of 650 words, all about the student. They also have to write typically a series of shorter supplemental essays with individual prompts that are given to them by the individual colleges. Sometimes those prompts are very straightforward. Sometimes those prompts are getting, a bit more into understanding who the student is, what they value, what their experiences have been. And so for students, this can create a pretty hefty workload. And so they start saying, okay, well, I don't even know what to write. I've got some students that are on one side and they won't even touch AI. They're too afraid to use it. And then I have other students who are maybe using it a little bit too much. So, think about kind of where you and your family are and where your student is as we're talking about this a little bit more tonight. So when it comes to college admissions, the college application itself has a lot of quantitative information, grades, test scores, class rank, right? They also get information about the school that the student has attended. They get to learn about different opportunities that the student has had in terms of their extracurricular activities, right? They get letters of recommendation. They're trying to get a holistic view of who the student is. So we've got this quantitative data, test scores, et cetera, and then we've got more of the qualitative information. College admissions has exploded. And so if you've been, paying attention over the last few years to schools that your student might be interested in, you've seen the application numbers have going up, 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 up exponentially, which means colleges are receiving more applications, which also means, for a lot of schools, it's getting a bit more competitive. And so when schools are having a lot of students with very similar strong academic profiles are coming through, now they're having to make the decision of how to shape their class, which students to admit from that really strong academic pool. And the essays are one of the areas that they go to understand who the student is. Within these essays, the colleges are not necessarily looking for grammar, punctuation, writing ability. Some still are evaluating for that. Some have actually publicly stepped away from evaluating for those things. Duke University actually last year announced that they are no longer using an evaluation of the students' technical writing ability in their application decision making because of increased use of AI, and it's impossible for them to know exactly how much work the student put into the essay versus maybe outside sources. So instead, what they're doing is they're using the essay as a way to better understand who the student is as a person, what experiences they've had, what perspectives they've had. And so, as AI has become more prevalent over the last few cycles, we're seeing colleges switching their supplemental essay prompts to be more identity, perspective, community, ethics focused. These are deliberately human questions, right? So, what they're asking students to do is write about something to look at their ability to reflect. They're not necessarily testing their ability to perform or to write as much as they're looking at the student's ability to reflect and share about experiences that are important to them. So, for example, here are, let's see, I pulled 3 different essay prompts from schools that many of my students who are applying to this year, just to give you a little bit of context as we go into this conversation. So, the first one is discuss one of your personal qualities and share a story, anecdote, or memory of how it helped you make a positive impact on a community. So, we can use AI to write that, right? But it's not then going to, the student's not having the opportunity to share about a specific story. It can't be a broad, in general, I'm a kind, ethical person, right? What they're looking for is a very specific, unique story that is only true for that student. AI is not going to give you that, right? The next one is describe a time when you engaged others in meaningful dialogue around an issue that was important to you. Did this exchange create change, new perspectives, or deeper relationships? Again, we're needing to be really specific here. So, a story that's very vague or broad or generic, right, isn't going to hit the mark. And so it might be beautifully written, but then that essay is just going to blend in with any other essay that was written maybe about the same topic. Maybe a student chose to engage in meaningful dialogue about, the fact that they're a vegetarian and they're feeling very strongly about animal rights. Thousands of other people might pick that same topic, right? But what makes that essay unique and that response unique is the students' reasons behind it and the dialogue that they had and the outcome and what they learned about themselves. Again, that's not something that AI can really present truthfully. The third one is, and this one I think is great. This one hints at, and I've seen this something like this on multiple applications. Colleges are aware that students are using AI. They're using it too, and we're going to get to that. So this prompt is, tell us about a situation when you would or would not choose to use AI when possible and permitted. What shapes your thinking? So it's a little meta, right? Like thinking about having AI write an essay about when is it not appropriate to use AI. So that's, yeah. So these are the types of questions that students are having to answer. And so colleges are being really strategic about that because they're looking for stories about the student. They are not just looking for a writing sample. If that's what they wanted, they could have your student submit a graded paper, which some colleges do ask for, right? They're really trying to get to know the student. And so by, putting the prompts this way, um, using AI is going to undermine their efforts. One thing for students who are feeling really stuck. So I have a lot of students who are like, I just don't know where to start, or I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. So for something like that, I recommend that my students use the speech to text tool in Google or whatever platform they're using. Just tell me the story. Or sometimes I'll just have the student tell me the story and I'm just sitting there transcribing word for word exactly what they're saying. We get the story down and then they can kind of wordsmith it and they can reorganize it. But doing something like that instead of just putting it into ChatGPT and saying, here's kind of what I want to say, make it sound better, right? writing it out or just speaking it out and getting it onto the screen is actually going to help your student have their ideas come from real life experiences presented in the way that they communicate. And so that's going to come across sounding much more natural and not AI polished, which isn't necessarily going to serve them very well. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, and actually it came up yesterday with a student, I was like, oh, it's almost like you know what I'm going to be talking about on Sunday, is that detection tools are imperfect, but the admissions readers are not. Okay. So I had a student text me and they were panicking because they've been hearing stories about other students' application essays getting flagged for AI and that impacting their admissions decision. And so then they were afraid that their essays would get flagged. So they put them in an or a AI detector tool, and certain phrases were coming back as being probably AI created. And I feel quite confident that this student did not use AI to write their essays, mainly because there were moments where I was watching them type the essay into a Google document. So that wasn't a concern, but it does raise the stress that some students might feel. What if, this is wrongly determined to be AI, and then that has a negative impact on my admissions decision? So let's talk about that. The tools are definitely imperfect, right? But admissions readers have a really sharp instinct for what feels authentic versus what feels automated. So if you've ever used a tool like what's the one? Some of the teachers, I think, use something called Turnitin. There's also GPT Zero. There's different AI checkers that you can pull up even for free. And you can put a piece of writing in and it'll come back and it'll say, okay, this was 92% AI generated, right? We've all, or if you've played around with these things, we've all had those moments where you know that it's not. You know that it's something that maybe you wrote and then you put it in and it said it was AI generated. So we know these things aren't perfect, but instead of thinking about if an AI tool checks it, think more about in reality what's going to happen when an admissions officer reads this. Admissions officers are reading thousands of essays a year. When that is your job, it is very easy to notice something that stands out, right? So if phrasing sounds off, if tone does not sound like a 17-year-old, if an essay feels overly polished or really flat is usually another red flag for me. That's a sign that it may have been written by AI. Even if it wasn't written by AI, it's not that great of an essay, right? So either way, that might not be helpful if you're really relying on that essay to kind of boost up the strength of your application. In our work, my colleagues and I are definitely seeing AI use being more widespread this year, of course, right? The more common it is, the more students are going to feel comfortable using it. It makes it feel much more normal when everybody is just using this resource, right? But I also think then that that's made it a lot more obvious. So there's some telltale signs that we have found in our work that we all kind of laugh about. So a big one for me is overuse of semicolons and em dashes. I have very rarely seen a 17-year-old use semicolons and em dashes correctly in the wild. And now, so if all of a sudden I'm seeing essay drafts with this type of punctuation for a student who this doesn't quite align with what I've seen with their other writing before, or, kind of what I know of them as an English student, that's definitely going to stand out. Another one is like just broad sweeping claims. There's some really common phrasing that we see a lot coming up in AI generated essays, like, for all of time, but then without anything specific, like these big generalizations at the beginning of the sentence, but then no details, nothing specific. Again, because it's AI written, it's not human written. You can't give me an example, to back that up. Lack of detail. And also, these essays, going back to what I was saying before, we're looking for honesty and vulnerability and like who you are as a person. These essays do not have those, right? Again, they tend to be pretty flat. So human readers in these admissions offices, they're caring about specificity. We're looking for moments. We're looking for, names. We're looking for colors. We're looking for emotions. We're looking for like really detailed aspects of this experience that makes the story yours, right? And a detection tool isn't going to, you know, fake that basically. So I'm not too worried about that, and it's because the detection tools are not perfect. Universities would be putting themselves in a bit of a risky spot, using them broadly just because, do have false positives. And so they'd have to be very careful, accusing someone of using them. The liability definitely is there. So I think it's less about worrying about AI detection tools and more about making sure that what your student is writing actually sounds like them and is serving the purpose that that essay needs to serve. The third thing, like I said before, is that the big change this year is that schools are using AI too, and some of them are even owning up to it and telling us about it. So this is another big change for this year. You might have seen in the news, a couple of schools actually have come out and announced that they are using AI technology so that they can more efficiently review applications. So it doesn't necessarily make the process less personal. It actually makes it more efficient for the universities and the readers. So Virginia Tech is a great example. So they announced this year that they are using AI readers alongside human readers to review the essays that students submit. So for Virginia Tech, students have 4 short supplemental essays that are a very important part of the Virginia Tech application. And so what they've determined is they have a system where basically AI reads the essay and a human reader reads the essay, and they each score the essay on a scale. And if there is they've set a numerical difference, and if there's too big of a difference between the AI score and the human score, then a second human will be brought in to read the essay, which is similar to what their process was previously with 2 humans reading each of the essays. And so what this does for a school like Virginia Tech, who's receiving tens of thousands of applications a year, this allows them to have more human interaction with the application in a more holistic way. You're freeing up people to spend more time looking at other parts of the application, activity lists, etc., instead of having, so many people doing the same thing that then we can have AI do a part of. So that's how they're using it this year. It'll be interesting to see what they learn from that process and how that evolves for next year. UNC Chapel Hill is another school that uses AI to review essays. They use their AI to do a little bit of a pre-score and a pre-review of the essay before it is sent to the reader. And they are looking for grammar, sentence structure, clarity of writing. So they still are looking for that as a kind of a first review, but then it is still going to a human reader to read for that context. So with application volume at record high at these schools, the AI tools are really helping the colleges streamline the logistics so that their reviewers can spend more time looking at more of the qualitative aspects, the holistic elements, like personal insight and growth and context for the student within their whole application, instead of, having to spend less time going through the same number of applications. So it's really important to know that, I think for students, it's important to know that AI may read or have some eyes on your essay, but AI at these schools is not making the decision of whether you will be admitted or not. So admissions is using AI to help them handle the workload, right? And so when students are thinking about how to use AI in their applications, having a similar approach is what would be recommended, right? So you wouldn't want admissions making the decision, or you wouldn't want AI making the decision for you, right? And admissions doesn't want AI writing the essay for you. So it's about finding that balance. Every school is different. So when it comes to, ethical transparency, right? Every university is different in terms of what their policy is around AI. There are some universities on their admissions pages that say, we don't want students using AI in any way, shape, or form. If you are using AI in any form on your application, that would be in breach of our honor code, essentially, right? And then there are other schools that take a much different approach. Caltech, for example, now will require students to disclose if they've used AI during their application process. That's on the application. And Caltech defines what is ethical, right? So did you use AI in an ethical way in your process? So according to Caltech, idea generation is perfectly ethical. Checking your grammar is perfectly ethical, but writing a full draft with AI would not be, right? So there's a wide range. And so in order to, make sure that you're following the ever-changing policies, one thing that you can check is each of the schools that you're applying to, you can go to their admissions page and you can look to see if they have an AI policy. I would recommend always doing that to make sure that you know that you're on the right side of what the expectation is for that school. So the bottom line is that everything everything continues to change, right? There's always updates. But AI can be a fantastic resource if you're using it well, if you're using it ethically. As the stress levels continue to go up, resist the urge to outsource your work, right? Remind your student they're awesome, they've got this. They don't need another person to write their work, their essays, and they don't need AI to write their essays, right? It's okay to use these tools to brainstorm or to, like Caltech was saying, to edit grammar, right? But from my experience, when students take an essay and put it into ChatGPT and say, make this sound better, because that's a pretty common generic prompt that I see them using, they end up with something that just does not sound like a 17-year-old wrote it. It tends to sound flat and it's not going to serve them well. So I will open it up for Q&A. I will be back in a few weeks on November 2nd. That is the day after a big application deadline. So November 1st is a big, very common early action deadline for colleges and universities. And so on November 2nd, I will be back talking about what you should do next. So for those of you with seniors, if you applied to college back in the 90s like I did, it's a very different process. We used to just put our applications in the mail, hope for the best, and not do anything until March. It's a whole different ballgame now. So make sure you tune in on November 2nd so that you don't miss any really crucial, important next steps that really could impact the admissions decision that your student receives. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. So question, Nadia says, would the guidance on the first question be regarding a story from your activities list or choose another story for a different community? Oh, okay. So you're talking about when I was giving the essays. So that essay was about discuss one of your personal qualities and share a story, anecdote, or memory of how it helped you make a positive impact on a community. So that could be related to one of your activities, or it doesn't have to be, right? So what they really are looking for is impact and it being a part of a community, like those two things, impact and community. So what is a personal quality that you have, and then how do you use that to benefit others? It's really common for students to say, and I see this one a lot, get AI'd, and then I have to tell students like, this is flat, we need to rework this. But students will pick a quality and then they'll kind of pick a situation and then they'll have AI pull it together a story, but it ends up being really flat. It's not enough just to say, like I was saying before, I'm really kind and I use my kindness when I volunteer, at the food bank, right? We're looking for a specific time, this one day at the food bank, this specific thing happened. And here was how my kindness had a positive impact on the group of people who I feel I'm a part of, the community of at the food bank. It has to be really specific in order to nail that prompt. So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's usually students are writing these essays about an experience they had in one of the activities that they've done because that's what they spend a lot of time doing. But as a rule, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, good question. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much. Good luck. Hang in there, senior parents. We've got this. Like I said, it's only a few weeks until November 1st. And then what is in, right? It's going to be great, but we're going to make it. It's going to be great. Your student's going to make it. Everything's going to be fine. We've got this. Just tell them to put the chat GPT down and write their essays and talk to you about them. One thing you can do if you're like, oh, I don't know if they're using chat GPT, or I don't know if this sounds too AI, have them read it aloud to you or you read it aloud. I do that with every single one of my students' essays. Before I'm like, yes, this is done, I either have them read it aloud to me if we're together, or I read it out loud to myself. And if it doesn't sound, if there's like a little alarm bell going off for you, if it doesn't sound like them, if it doesn't sound like any 17-year-old you've ever heard, chances are we need some revisions before you hit submit. Awesome. Well, best of luck to all of you. We'll see you back here on November 2nd, and I hope you have a great night. Thanks so much. Bye bye.